If you wanna dance with me, say if you wanna dance with me. If you wanna dance with me. If you wanna
Oh, oh. Maybe it's a good time to go ahead and put an end to that nonsense. A little bit of music there to get us started. Hi, this is Random Excess, and you're listening to Random Thoughts with Dutch and Random. How you doing tonight, Dutch?
I'm good. Getting pretty excited about what's going to be coming up the next couple of weeks. And the show.
Yeah. All right. And yeah, hopefully keep warm out there. It's another cold night out there. We've been having a bit of a cold spell. And I'm kind of like, ooh, got to figure this out. There's a lot in my head. I'm not going to get it all out. I got about 5 hours of talking in my head that I'm going to try and let about a half hour out. We'll see how that goes. And already I kind of blew it a little bit. I wanted to start us out there with the opening page. In fact, there's the opening page. Okay, hi, this is Random Excess. You're here on Random Thoughts with Random and Dutch. There, take two. Hope that one came out a little bit smoother. All of a sudden, like my mind just went empty. Because I'm afraid to start this because I'm going to start talking, and it's going to. And I start talking, and it's going to. It's just my mind is going to explode. I was giving Shane here, Dutch, a taste of it, and I think I scared myself a little bit. But I have to trust that this is going to work out. Because let me just refresh where I start with my view of the universe. The universe is always speaking, and the universe is never lying. I sometimes fail to hear the universe, and I sometimes fail to believe the universe. So there's two things going on there. There's the universe speaking and always speaking the truth, and then there's me listening and me sometimes not hearing the truth and sometimes just not hearing at all. And I have to try and challenge that hearing, that perception. That hearing there, that's my perception. It's the filter that sits between me and the events of the universe. There's stuff happening in the universe that I now perceive, thoughts in my head. There's emotional responses. There's analytical thoughts going on based on what I think I'm seeing, what I notice, what seems important to me at the time. That's all my perception. So that's really me listening to the universe and then reacting to what I hear. I have to remember that what the universe says is always the truth, but it's what I hear which may not always be the truth. It's distorted. It's some of it's been omitted, and so I have to challenge my perspective at times. So hopefully I do that, and hopefully I will do that. And then that kind of reminds me of makes me think of the word humility, because humility comes down to, for me, is this first part of humility is that willingness to admit that my perceptions are distorted, that I don't have perfect knowledge of the universe. It's one thing for me to say that the universe contains perfect knowledge and the universe is always speaking the truth, and there's, that's sitting out there. That's not a statement of arrogance. That's just a statement that I'm making. I'm not really putting any label on it. I'm granting the universe that that special place. It says, okay, the universe can have all the truths, and it can only speak the truths, and I'll let the universe do that. The humility part is where I admit that my perceptions are not perfect, and that I have imperfections, and that I'm going to be distorting my thinking. I'm going to have inappropriate emotional responses, and I have to own that. And I can also work on that. I can work to change my perceptions. It's not the only thing I can do. I've talked a little bit about how sometimes you can get in, you can monkey a little bit with your thinking, and that's one of the things I want to talk about today a little bit. And you can monkey with your emotions, and there's ways to do that chemically, so I'm not going to talk about that. It's up to you and your doctor to figure out what pharmaceutical aids you need to have clarity of thought. Maybe you need to quit drinking. I would suggest, if anybody's having a problem with drinking, that's not a bad thing to do. And also mood stabilization and calm your emotions. There's chemical interventions for that. But there's also things that you can do that are not chemical, not professional. And that's one thing that I kind of want to get to and talk about a little bit. It has to do with speaking and hearing, and it starts out with that same duality of always speaking the truth, always hearing the truth. And that's kind of where communication, language handshake. If I think of truths being in thoughts, and I want to communicate one truth to from one thought to somewhere else, I have to make sure that I speak the truth, then I have to make sure that I hear the truth, and then the truth can be communicated. And so I have to do this same language handshake with the universe. And my perception is this interlocking. It's the thing that regulates the interlocking there between me and the universe. The universe is trying to communicate with me. I'm trying to listen to the universe, but my perception is getting in the way. So I have to work on that and make sure that's as clear as possible. And maybe not as clear as possible. I mentioned this yesterday too. It has to also block as much as possible that would just distract me. There's some things when you're witnessing an event that you just need to block out. I mean, I think I mentioned if we accepted all the stimuli coming in from the universe into your head at one time, it's probably going to explode. So we have to filter filter events that way. But then we also have to make sure that what does get through actually is as clear as possible, so that we can deal with it in the most reasonable way. Okay, so that's I don't know if maybe I said nothing. I felt like I talked for a few minutes there, and maybe I said something. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm setting you up. I hope I'm setting you up. But I want to be thinking in terms of duality of speaking and listening, of truth, and then the humility part is that I have to admit that I am fallible as a person, as a human, as somebody who's listening to the universe, as someone who's a small piece of the universe. I'm going to be a little bit flawed. The universe in its totality is perfect and true. Me as a little piece of that, well, I can't be perfect and true. I'm just a piece of the universe. The perfection and the truth isn't assembled until we're all present, until the universe is taken as a whole. And that's where the truth is. When I isolate myself as a being, as a conscious being, I create a little bit of imperfection. But I'm going to try and do some local analysis here to figure out sort of global mapping. Trying to understand the entire universe from my little privileged perspective, from where I sit. What can I see? What can I believe? And I'm going to have to admit that I'm not going to be able to see and believe everything. But I'm going to work on connecting in the most efficient and least distorted way possible, without throwing away as much, without throwing away the really important stuff. Okay. I don't know. Does that sound like I could get that squeeze in a half hour talking with that Dutch?
No, absolutely not. You're going to do the best that you can, and this isn't just this show goes on every day. So if we have to, we'll just bring it over to another show. But I know that this is important to you, and I know that this really speaks to the way that you think and do things. So I'm definitely listening more than I normally am today, or normally am on the show. I don't feel well my best, but I'm more importantly, I'm willing to listen and see what things mean to you. As you as a friend, and also as a co-host, business partner, whatever the case may be, because I think that we can definitely do a lot less criticizing of people and how they feel and how they think and do things, and a lot more of learning why people do the way things that they do. So that's why I'm sitting here for the most part.
Great, thanks a lot, Shane. Let's see here. Come on, trying to get the screen to move there. Trying to get all the little pieces here working together that I have to coordinate the show. I'm probably overproducing the show for what it needs to do, but I'm like toys. I'm playing with them, trying this little split screen thing going up here. been looking at trying to get a split screen going where you can watch both Shane and I at the same time. That's kind of on hold for the moment. But you can see our little Twitter stream here. We've talked about using the Random Thoughts with Random Access tag, just the initials, RTWRE. Anything gets posted to the Facebook page by me gets also automatically tweeted. I preface those tweets with those Facebook posts with the hashtag so that they show up on the Facebook page, on the Twitter page, so that I could follow some Twitter stuff. But I encourage you to get involved. Tweet us. You can tweet at us live during the show. It'll pop up. That's a live Twitter feed happening right there, watching the hashtag. So if anybody were to tweet that, tweet something up there, they would see this. These are the last 3 stories here that have been posted to the Facebook page and then sent to Twitter. And I want to talk a little bit about those because they're going to kind of tie in together a little bit. And I'll tell you what they made me think. So, we already lost one because somebody tweeted to us and pushed the story off the page. But there was a story about local and sustainable food. And you can see the story on our Facebook page. But local and sustainable, to me, is an important issue, not just for food, but for energy and for water. We need to learn to live our lives and be able to fully live our lives locally and sustainable. We can't rely as much as we are on external, very far away products and services, including things like energy, electricity, water, food. We're going to have to learn to take care of ourselves. It's just that's the only thing that's sustainable. I mean, it's not sustainable otherwise. Otherwise, you have to rely on these giant networks to provide you with basic services. And if those networks fail, not only is that bad for you, that's bad for everyone on the network. Whether it's the electricity grid, whether it's the water system, whether it's the food supply system, it's an unbelievable number of eggs in one basket, waiting for that grid to fail, whether it be energy, food, or water, or anything else that depends on these sort of large distribution grids. That said, that's what that story made me think. So we either say there's a story about locally sustainable food. Then there's another story up here about, you can see at the top of the page now, the return to the good old days. As the sun is set to become the leading source of power, leading source of energy for humans for the first time, since a long time ago in history, before in the old days. And solar power, return to solar power. Solar power is an example of something that's local and sustainable. You can put up solar panels at your house. In your neighborhood, you don't have to rely on this giant grid to bring you electricity if you're using solar power. It's something that you can do locally, and it's sustainable because as long as the sun's shining and you're getting power, So there's that. That's just, it's not like you run out of sunshine when you use it. Wind is another example of something that's local and sustainable. And there's also talk of Lockheed Martin announced that they can build a little mini fusion reactor, maybe, which is. They're still 10 to 15 years, 5 to 10 years off from a prototype, but that's exciting because then it allows maybe for smaller reactors, smaller power sources that are more local, so that we're not really, again, relying on giant grids to bring us power. From Niagara, New York City, relying on power. The whole Northeast United States. A couple of years ago, you may remember a fuse blew in Niagara, and it took out the whole Northeast United States for a couple hours. That's not really a good thing. And then the conspiracy side of me also says that once you have these huge grids like this, you're now beholden to the people who control those grids. So maybe failure is not the problem, but maybe the problem is control. Somebody controls your food supply. Somebody far away who you have no contact with. You don't even know who they are. They're controlling whether or not you get food. They're controlling whether or not everybody gets food. That's I don't know. It doesn't strike me as it's not very liberating. It's not very free. It's not very as a human being in the universe. That kind of scares me a little bit. So I'm worried about that. One big grid that we do have to rely on, and we need some sort of oversight to protect this, and that's the internet. The internet allows us to communicate. Communication is one of those things which we need to do globally. I think ideas don't have to be born and then kept local. ideas are meant to be shared. I think as humans, we're meant to communicate, whether it's communicate to the person across the room or the person across the world. And the internet for right now is one of the great tools for doing that. And the internet is actually under threat. With this net neutrality is a big thing. I don't want to talk about that tonight, but rest assured the network, the internet is under threat from people controlling it too much. Elon Musk, great businessman, interesting businessman, I should say. He's putting together a plan. He's the guy that's doing SpaceX. He's going to go to Mars. He's building the electric cars, Tesla. He made a fortune off PayPal. He revolutionized the way we can charge money over the internet. And then from there, he's decided, he's moved on to building electric cars, and then also in solar cities. He's on the board of directors for Solar City, so he's bringing solar energy to the whole world, not just cars. All his solar battery stuff, patents, he's turned over to public domain. He doesn't make any money off those. Anybody can use them. It's a business move also, because if you want to get in the business of building electric cars and he has free patents out there, he's kind of dictating what format you use, sort of passively, saying, if you want, you could design it yourself if you like. But if you'd like some free designs, but now you're building it compatible with his systems, and he's sitting there on Solar City, so he has some overlap going on there, and he's doing the SpaceX, Dragon, all those flying to the space station. He wants to go to Mars, so he's a big forward thinker. He's also going to be doing this thing where he wants to launch a couple hundred of these mini satellites and basically rebuild the internet. But have it with these hundreds of connected satellites so that it's not a grid that can go down. I mean, 1 or 2 satellites, 50 satellites could go down, but the internet survives. So it's nobody can control it unless you can control all the satellites, and I guess he'll do that. So I guess maybe somebody does control it. I don't know what the plan is actually after that. So maybe I just overstated his greatness, and Elon Musk is really the devil. I don't know. Okay. All right. So what's local sustainable power? That's great. And then there's this other story here. You can see it up here. Is about read it. Yeah, a much better outcome than the usual suspects, who demand that they teach their favorite myths in science classes. You may be familiar with Kansas is like the big state for this, but in the U.S. here, creationism there's been a big push over the last many years to try and force schools, and not even try to force schools. Schools are just doing it, so we're trying to force schools not to do this, but to teach creationism in science classes. And the problem with this, of course, is that creationism is not science. Creationism is creationism, and there's nothing scientific about it. What does Wayne mean by that? Well, I don't know. Maybe you have to go talk to somebody about what science is or isn't. But creationism is not science, and so science teachers aren't saying creationism is false. They're saying it's not science. It shouldn't be taught in our science classes. Well, in West Virginia, they recently passed a law, or whatever they passed, but they're going to now be teaching, doing a much better job teaching climate change in their science classes. They've decided that climate change science really is real. 97% more than climatologists agree that humans are causing this, and all this. So we're going to teach it as science. I mean, that's a better scientific agreement than any other science theory that they teach in classes. There's none more accepted than climate change, except for maybe evolution, which is the other battle. Trying to teach science in science classes apparently is an affront to people, which makes me wonder. It's like, well, I don't understand. People just don't understand what science is. What is science? And maybe that's the question. Maybe that's something that gets to me as I see these stories and I react, because I have a picture in my mind of what I think science is. And I see these people trying to teach things that are not science, or trying to fight against teaching science in class. And then I wonder, well, don't they understand that it's a science class? Why? I struggle with that. And part of that is because I have a picture in my head of what I think science is. And maybe I want to talk a little bit about that tonight. And in fact, I called this episode Science versus Math, the battle for the mind of the universe. What does that even mean? I don't know. I could talk for hours on this, but when I think of the mind of the universe, I'm using that phrasing because I want to think of the wise mind image that I've mentioned a couple times, and you can find in any book. But our thoughts are kind of 2 categories of thoughts. We have these emotional thoughts, and then we have these rational thoughts. And one way I want to think about them is my emotional thoughts those are the thoughts that are always speaking to me. They're always trying to get me to do something. Those are the devils on my shoulders. Those are the angels on my shoulders. Those are the cheerleaders. My emotions are the things that push me to action. That's the job of the emotion. It gets you to react. And to react in a way that's just not instinct, but actually to act in a way that's a little bit higher order reaction. And in fact, it makes sense that in the brain, that's where that sits. The emotional part of the brain sits in the mammal brain, which sits above the lizard brain. Way down the bottom of your brainstem is the lizard brain. That's like the simplest brain. That's like the instinct brain. It's the brain that just does things. It's not necessarily out of emotion, not out of thoughtful emotion. It's more out of instinct. I'll give you an example. Lizard, think about a lizard. Think chameleons. Chameleons change colors. Why do chameleons change colors? Well, you think, they change from green to brown, back and forth. They don't really have a lot of some red, like red, green, and brown, I guess. But they do so. It's not a thoughtful emotional reaction in this sense. That and I'm not really sure if it is. I think maybe they turn brownish when they're stressed, so they're hanging out on the leaves. The leaves are maybe when they're stressed they turn green. So I guess they're hanging out on the whatever they are. But they get stressed, they change color. But they always change the same color when they're stressed. It's like always they always turn brown when they're stressed, or it's they always turn green. I don't know which one it is, but their stress response is a lizard response. It's not like I'm emotional. Let me what should I do here? There's no sort of emotional thought about it. It's just more like it's an instinct. It's just a reaction. So you can put a lizard on the wrong color background, I guess, and you can startle them. I already startle lizards, and chameleons, and they'll change a color that doesn't match the background because they have their versus other great mimic octopus or something like this, or some little cephalopods out there that do these wonderful camouflage things where you can put them against different backgrounds and they'll change their as an emotional response, but they'll change to fit the background. It's like they kind of there's some emotional awareness going on, and that happens in the mammal brain. They're not mammals, but it's a higher brain function. It sits above the lizard brain. There's a higher brain function. This is emotional brain, but this is the part that's always speaking. It's the one that's driving us to action. And then there's the other side of the brain, which is this rational part. This is the part that's processing the information. It's actually doing some deep thinking. It's up in the cortex, right? So it's that outer layer. This is actually the very high functioning brain. This is the brain that chimps. We share the chimps that we share with the dolphins. With the elephants. I mean, this is big brain stuff. The seat of consciousness, some people even say. Whether or not that's true, I'm not going to have that conversation at the moment. But that's the part where you're actually processing and doing some deep processing. Meanwhile, the emotions are yelling at you to do something. Come on, do something, do something, do something. Where the lizard brain would have just done it automatically. The emotional brain at least has got the courtesy it yells at you, but it waits for a minute. But depending on how excited you are, the emotions can take over, and then you end up just doing what you're going to do. So your emotions are talking, and the thinking part is listening. It's listening to the universe. It's also listening to the emotions. And the emotions basically are just talking. They can calm down. You can calm your emotions down with some thoughts. So you can, while they're speaking, you can kind of adjust the volume on them a little bit with your thoughts. But they are always speaking, and depending on what's going on, you have that. So there's those two halves of the inside. There's the speaking and the listening. And when I go back to what I said at the beginning about the universe, in my view of the universe is always speaking. The universe never lies. I don't always hear the universe. I don't always believe the universe. The universe's job is to speak, and it's my job to listen. And it's to try and, the universe always speaks the truth, so I don't have to worry about that. But it's my job to always listen for the truth. And that's where science comes in. To me, science is that thing which always listens for the truth. A scientific experiment is basically a lens on the universe which gets a predictable result. What makes it predictable is that it's the truth. The universe is very predictable. It tells the truth. You have to discern what that truth is. It's a little bit chaotic to us. There's a pattern that we don't see. Science tries to pull out that pattern. It tries to pick out the little pieces. It tries to listen for the truth. So that's what science is to me. Science is that tool which listens for the truth. It does it in such a way that it only hears the truth. When you do science, a scientific experiment, granted, they're all flawed and there's mistakes are made, blah, blah, blah. But when you're doing science, you're focused on listening for the truth. But you do it in such a way, probably, because this would have to make sense, that you're going to have to block out some things that are true. But the only thing that gets through the filter, gets through the perspective of science, is true things, but it's going to have to block some things out. And blocking some things out is probably going to block out some true things. So science can only hear the truth. I'll buy that, but I'll also admit that science can't hear all the truths. Science only hears the truth, but it can't hear all the truths. Okay, that's science versus math, the battle for the mind of the universe. The other half of the mind is the speaking, and to me, that's mathematics. Mathematics is that part of the universe, maybe, or it's that part of us, or it's that part of something. It's that tool that only speaks the truth. Mathematics is a model for the universe. The universe always speaks the truth. Math always speaks the truth. Math is this thing that models the universe. And perhaps some people would argue, and there's a book about it, the universe is mathematical. The universe is mathematics. In a very real sense it is, because it always speaks the truth, and a mathematical model is a model which always speaks the truth. So I could easily stretch myself and say, oh, well, the universe, if it always speaks the truth, then it's a mathematical model. Now, it's not a mathematical model that I completely understand, and to my knowledge, no human completely understands it. But I can build mathematical models which always speak the truth, and then they will, in some small way, they'll model the universe in some small way. And there's two very popular models for the universe that are mathematical models that do this, and one is relativity and one is quantum mechanics, and they're slightly different. They both always tell the truth, but they're incompatible. So there's some rub there. There's something that they're not quite. They start failing a little bit. There's a little flaw. They don't overlap enough. But when you listen to what they have to say, just when you only listen to one of them, it always tells the truth. And we do these experiments based on relativity. It's always talking. It's the model that's talking. It's the math that's talking. And it says, hey, if you look for this, you're going to find this to be true. And then somebody goes and builds a scientific experiment to listen for that result, whether it's the orbit of Mercury, which is a famous experiment, or whether it's any of the number of experiments in relativity that have been done over the years, frame dragging. I don't know. They go on and on. You can look them up. But the point is that the math talks, the science listens, and it verifies them. It's like, wow, that model must be true because I'm hearing it. I conduct the experiment, I get the result, and I verify it. So the mathematical models we have for the universe, they tend to hold up. But it's the math that holds up. It's a mathematical model. Math always speaks the truth. And when you just take relativity by itself, we don't have any problems with it by itself. Same with quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is even better than relativity as far as accuracy of 15 decimals of accuracy and measuring the mass of an electron. Just crazy precision in quantum mechanics, which lets us know that this is some powerful stuff here. But because it's mathematics, and it's very, very nice, beautiful mathematics. And when you listen for it, you hear it. Now, when you start putting quantum mechanics and relativity together and start thinking about what happens near a black hole, everything goes out the window. We don't understand enough. There's something going on there that neither one of them is capturing perfectly. So the models there are just not quite complete enough. They're models for the universe, but they're not big enough models. And so there's a search for the bigger model that has sitting inside of it relativity and quantum mechanics, and then quantum field theory might be an example of that, or quantum loop gravity, or string theory, or M theory. So there's these things all sitting out there where people are trying to marry these two things up, saying, I know they're both right for the things they do, so there's got to be a bigger truth out there that holds both of them, because I know where it is. Look, there it is, the universe. We're here, so there's something going on. There's black holes, so there's something going on. So these things we've got to marry up. So the thing is that math is always speaking. Math is like the emotional part of the brain. But math maybe is the emotional part of the universe. It's that part that's always speaking. It's the one that's always driving us to action. It's saying, look here, look here, look here. This is what is true. This is what is true. This is what is true. And science is that part that's kind of calm, sit back, say, whoa, hold on. I hear you speaking. I don't think I want to hear what you're saying. I don't want to hear all that. You got to settle down. I only want to hear what comes out of my experiments. So math and physics, math and science people can sometimes disagree on sort of like the view of the universe. And I think sometimes they each think they have the view of the universe, not realizing that they're actually two parts, just like our emotional thoughts and our reasonable thoughts are part of the same mind. Math and science are two halves of the same mind of the universe. And there's no reason for them to battle. Mathematicians and scientists can get along. Scientists and both of them need to be a little bit more humble. One, mathematicians need to admit that they don't know the whole truth of the universe, and science needs, so they're not speaking the whole truth of the universe, and the scientists need to admit they're not listening to the whole truth. They're only listening to what it is that can be verified. But and they really have no other choice, either one of them. We can only develop the math that we can develop, so that's all we can do. And science is driven by this need that it has to be the same science for everyone at every point in the universe at all points in time. So science can't be this one thing that captures the entire universe at once. All science can do is capture what can be seen from a single point. And what it sees at every single point now can be translated, but it can't. It's a very local phenomenon. That's what science is. It's very local in that sense, but it translates. So you can take this science here, and then I go somewhere else, and I do the science again, and I get the same science. But I'm not doing all the universe all at once. I'm doing from one point a perspective on the universe. So science is a bit, it's a perspective on the universe from a single point. It is not the entire universe. So there are going to be things in science that science is not going to know. But that's the way that goes. And there was one other thing I wanted. Now I kind of lost it because I slowed down to try and talk about some of these points. And these are points that I'm going to probably talk about before because those are like pretty big ideas in my head.
So you were being scientific.
I was being scientific. Hold on.
Okay. Well, you said that you were trying to slow down. You were being scientific, and allowing you to take in a little bit and to pause for a second. So that's how I got that.
Okay. Yeah, I was listening to my own thoughts, I guess, and that was dangerous. I should maybe, I'm a mathematician more than I am a scientist, but maybe I'm more of a philosopher. Maybe where's philosophy sitting there? I think the philosopher maybe is the person that sits in the middle of both of them. In fact, that's true. Which now I have to stop here on this train of thought because now we can go on to a whole line of talk where I start talking about people like Maimonides and Pseudo-Diogenes and Maximus the Confessor and apophatic theology, negative theology, that kind of thing. Where this whole thing that goes on here, I could start talking about that. Scholasticism, another whole great thing. And maybe that's where I sit more, is in that philosophy thing, which sort of sits in between the math and the science. It's maybe it's the language that connects them. It's kind of philosophy maybe, where it wonders about the universe. So there's another great science story I want to tell at some point about the same battle for the mind of the universe, and it has to do with the development of sort of from early great steps in electricity early on, from Faraday through Maxwell to Einstein, and in this transition where we actually go from one side of the brain, the scientific side of the brain, through to the mathematical side of the brain, to exploit science. There's this wonderful little story I could tell, whether it's tied to reality, I don't know, but it feels like it's a great story of Faraday, who was a man with no mathematical skills really, but great experimental skills, and then Maxwell, who was able to come up with the math behind those experiments and say, there's some beautiful math that describe your experiments. And then Einstein, who took a step further and said, rather than develop math that has that reflects this great experiment, I'm just going to develop some math, and then we're going to see what experiments kind of fall out of the sky. And that's where physics is now. They do this theoretical physics. It's like the birth of maybe that's what it is. It's the birth of theoretical physics, from experimental physics, Faraday, to Einstein, which is kind of the birth of theoretical physics, where they do the physics on paper, and then they go out and look in the universe and they find out that it's true. It's like, whoa, how did you do that? And it's this thing, I believe, is because the universe is always speaking and always speaking the truth. The universe has to be mathematical. So if I could develop mathematical models, it's going to develop things that speak the truth. And then if I'm using science carefully, I'm going to be able to hear those truths. So I'm going to be able to use science to actually hear the truths from my models and I'm going to hear them being echoed, being actually spoken by the universe. I know in advance what they're going to sound like. I go out and I listen for them, and I hear them. So that's sort of the birth of theoretical physics. So that's a conversation I want to have one time. But I want to kind of leave there. I didn't really get to atheism was something I wanted to kind of hit on. Or I want to throw that out there. It's a great word because people react to the word. So it's a label. And so we all have a perspective, and this triggering event, the word atheism comes in through our perspective, and we get an emotional response, we get a thought response. But we could be all getting different responses because maybe we don't agree on what the word atheism is. Remember the language handshake? We have to agree on what words we use and what those words mean. We use the word atheism, but we mean different things by it, perhaps. And in fact, in my experience, people mean different things when they say they're an atheist or when they say they're not an atheist. So that's a conversation I want to have, and that ties into this same thing. But I want to kind of leave it there with the message. Learn, improve, share. I haven't even mentioned that tonight, right? Did I? Learn, improve, share. Performance feedback, revision. We got to evolve, right? If you're not evolving, you ain't merely dying. You're dead. Because evolution is life. So learn, improve, share, and encourage. And did I mention the feedback line? What was the thing I was talking about? Shane will verify this. You have to come up with the checklist for like the opening, to mention some certain specific things at the opening and some certain specific things at the closing, so that I know that I've started and I know that I've ended. But I want to go ahead and end with the feedback line. Give us a call. It's good in the U.S. and Canada. 1-5-189-666-175. Last night I was given 2 6s, 3 6s there in the phone number and the feedback number. It's open from 3 to 4 p.m. during the week, 3 to 5 on weekends, 11 to midnight every night after the show. That's 1-5-189-666-175. Give us a call. Random Thoughts feedback line, and we'll be back tomorrow with some more random thoughts. Any parting thoughts?
Like I said, we're working on a few things for the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow, my company has a special announcement that's kind of exciting for some things that we're going to be doing. And I know, and you're a great part of that. And, I'm looking forward to some of the conversations that you had, especially in regards to the atheist conversation. That's something that I'm interested to hear. And so, we got a lot of things that are going on, and I'm just excited to go about them. And right now I'm going to head to bed, and we'll take on tomorrow, hitting the ground running.
All right. Well, good night and courage. And we're almost out. Stop. Stop.
It's almost out.
Yep, it's still.